Hey, hello friends, welcome to my channel. In this Azure DevOps tutorial series, today let's discuss about an interesting topic called release pipeline in Azure DevOps. This is a very important one because your continuous delivery process revolves around how release pipeline actually works. Okay, so let's try to understand what release pipeline is, why do we need a release pipeline, and let's build a basic release pipeline to actually understand how that actually works end to end. All right. A release pipeline is used to manage how your application gets delivered and deployed after it has been built. Okay, so we have seen about build pipeline in our earlier videos, right? While a build pipeline actually focuses on compiling code, running tests, and producing artifacts, the release pipeline actually focuses on delivering those artifacts to different environments like, say, dev, testing, staging environment, or even production environment. Right? In simple words, a release pipeline automates the deployment of your application after it has been built. Okay, so what does release pipeline allows for? Okay, it allows for continuous delivery, manual or automated approvals, multi-stage deployment. When I say multi-stage deployment, deploying to different environments like dev, test, and production, and finally rollbacks and for versioning. Okay, for all these purposes, release pipelines are mainly used. Okay, so let's try to understand what are the key components of release pipeline. Okay, so we might have seen all these topics earlier, right? So for example, artifacts. Okay, so artifacts is which is the output from a build pipeline or external source like GitHub or Jenkins, right? And we also looked about stages as well. Stages are logical sections like dev, QA, and prod, each with its own tasks, right? Similarly, we have something called tasks, which are specific deployment actions, example like deploy to app services or running the scripts, etc. And then we have something called approvals and gates, which are like manual or automated checks before or after the stages, right? And finally we have something called triggers, which are conditions for starting the release, example like after a successful build. Okay, so in these kind of these are the main components which we actually use in release pipelines. Okay, these are the commonly used terms under release pipelines. We have already discussed more about all these topics in our earlier videos, so probably if you have any queries about these sections, you can just refer to my videos in the earlier playlist. And main stuff is, why do we actually need a release pipeline? Okay, I have listed few points which I feel are very key things to actually understand why do we actually need a release pipeline. Okay, first one is an automated deployment. As the name indicates, it eliminates the manual and error prone deployment steps. Fine. And then the key step as part of automated deployment is it ensures consistent deployment across environments like let's say dev, QA, UAT, production. Okay, so it will ensure the consistency across your environments for all deployment activities. And second main thing is the environment management. You can actually define multiple environments like dev, staging, testing, production, and you can actually control how code flow and how code flows through each of this environment, right? So each environment can have its own configurations, right, and variables and deployment strategy, which is of greater use when it comes to environment management. And then we have something called approval and governance. We have already seen about this in our previous videos, like how do you provide manual approvals and all. Okay, so you can actually add manual approvals. For example, you can actually ask your manager or a QA lead to sign off before your code moves to next steps. And then you need to and then obviously you will ensure compliance and auditability in your regulated industries, because Azure DevOps takes care of all the governance and compliance stuffs. And then we have something called traceability and auditing. Traceability and auditing, it provides visibility into who deployed what, when, and where, right? So it will give you a clear visibility around which person deployed this particular module and at what time and at what particular release or what situation. You can easily trace all these steps in your Azure DevOps release pipelines. And finally, it makes it very easy to roll back or redeploy to previous version if something goes wrong. Okay, this is a greater advantage with release pipelines. So if something doesn't work as expected and you see there's a glitch in your current release, you can always go back and revert to the previous release. Okay, and we already had a glance about security and compliance, right? So secrets and credentials can be managed securely via your ADO variable groups or even your key vault integration. Okay, so when you integrate with key vaults and other stuffs, obviously you are going to secure all your credentials and other secret stuffs that you will be using in your code. Okay, and finally it enforces consistent and secure deployment practices whenever you are working with security and compliance stuffs in Azure DevOps release pipeline. And last but not the least, you have something called integration with CI/CD. This is the very important part of your release pipeline. Okay, what it does is, when we say continuous integration and continuous delivery, we usually call build pipeline as continuous integration and release pipelines as continuous delivery. So it connects with build pipeline, which is your CI, to enable continuous delivery, which is the release pipeline. Okay, so it ensures that every code change can automatically flow into production if approved properly. Okay, in short, build pipeline creates artifacts like what to deploy. Release pipeline, it automates the deployment, where and how to deploy. Okay, so now this is more of a theoretical part where I gave you a high glance about what is release pipeline and when and where to use it. Let's see a quick demo to actually understand its flow. Once I go to the ADO site, you can go to release, you can go to pipeline task and you can select the releases under it. So once you go to releases, if you have already created a release, that would actually show here. Since I have not created any release pipeline, I'm gonna select new pipeline, and as soon as I select it, you can see there's something in the background which is more like a flowchart or a diagrammatic representation of how your pipeline will execute. But before that, let's start with few now I'm gonna start with an empty template, but in case if you are aware what you're doing, if you are doing some Azure App Service deployment or any Python based deployment or any other deployments, you can see all those information here. So the template is already available. You can select the template and perform the deployment activities. All right, for now, for simplicity, I'm just starting with an empty job. So once I start it, you can see there's a stage 1 that is coming. For example, my stage 1 will usually be development environment, so I'm just naming it as DEV. So once I added that stage, you can see there's a job created by default and there are 0 tasks because I haven't added any task in it. But before that, a key part is something called artifact. You can see before stages you have something called artifact which is added by default. So you have to decide or tell your stages what thing you have to deploy. Okay, what piece of code you have to deploy. Okay, so you can add an artifact. Okay, so an artifact can be a build. Okay, in the source type you can see it can be a build, it can be Azure repos, it can be GitHub, it can be TFVC, and you can see there are few other source type as well, like it can be Azure artifacts, Azure containers, Jenkins, etc. Okay, for now I have few things under my build, so I am selecting build, and you need to select the source of your build pipeline. So let me select a build pipeline. Okay, so this is the one which I have been frequently using and which I have created in the past too. So for easier understanding, I'm just selecting this particular build pipeline as the source. So once I select this, and you can see there are different versions. For now I'm just selecting the latest version, but you can also specify you can also give specific version or latest from a specific branch with tags or any other version which actually suits your artifact, right? So for now I'm just going with latest, and you can give a different alias if you need it. Okay, and you can there's an information icon at the bottom which actually shows you what is actually published in the artifacts. Okay, the artifacts published by each version will be available for deployment in release pipeline. So basically whatever is available in artifact will be deployed. Okay, for example, if you have a .NET code, if you that will be deployed. If you have a React code, it will be deployed. If you have a basic build pipeline and with the Python code, that will be deployed into a release pipeline. Okay, so the artifact will be under name drop. Okay, that's what this particular source is telling. Okay, let me add it and see what happens. So as soon as I add it, you can see that particular artifact got added here. Okay, so what is available inside that artifact you can see here. Okay, if I go and try to add a task, now your stage is empty, it doesn't have any task. Let me add a new task. Let's say I want to add a Python deployment kind of thing. Okay, let me select a Python script. So once I select the Python script, I need to provide the path of the script. So let me try to select one from the artifact. So you can see this is the artifact I have linked, right? You can see it as a linked artifact. So this is the one I have selected in the artifact section in the release pipeline. So from here I can choose any piece of code. This is my artifact name drop, and from here let me say I have been using compare to list, right? So let me select this Python code and I'm selecting OK. So meaning what I am telling my release pipeline is, you take this artifact, from that artifact you take this task which is the Python script which I have selected here, and go and deploy into different environments like development, staging, QA, production, UAT, whatever it is. Okay, so here reiterating, you just pick what you want to be deployed in this particular situation. Like in this particular situation you have a Python script which I have selected, but in real time you can have anything that can be deployed which is coming from your artifact. Okay, so artifact has a number of code or a number of tasks. All I am doing currently is just selecting a Python script and trying to add it as part of the task. Okay, I'm just saving it. Okay, so now if I go here, if I go to pipeline, so I have added a single task here. If you want to recheck it, you go again and see this task actually exists. Now if I want to add this, if I want to deploy the same code to another environment, say a QA, okay, empty job, I am renaming it as QA, and under QA also I am doing the same step. Okay, basically I am just trying to deploy the same code whatever I deployed to dev into QA as well. So I am just selecting the Python script again, and from here I am just selecting the same piece of code which is compare to lists. Okay, so now I'm saving this again. Okay, now if you look at this, now I have done something with the release pipeline. So what I did is I have just selected an artifact which is project online DevOps demo 1. This particular artifact comes from my build. Okay, this is my build pipeline, right? So this particular artifact come from my build, and that artifact contains a number of code, right? We selected one out of it in our different stages. What I'm telling at this stage level is, pick that particular code, Python code, and go ahead and deploy it in dev and QA environment. Okay, so this is something I have created now. Similarly, if you want to extend it to different environments like UAT and prod, you can add different stages and perform the same action. Okay, you can either add a stage or clone a stage. So once this is done, there's an option called create release at the top. You just create a release and click on create. So once this is created, you can go to this particular release and see the task. This release is created, and this is first step is queued and it started running. Okay, so for understanding how this works, even if I'm going in silence, doesn't matter. So I'm just sticking to the screen to actually show you what's actually happening in real time. Okay, so something is running in your dev environment, right? You can see that task 2 out of 3 tasks completed, which means that particular piece of code, whatever I have created, is trying to deploy into this particular dev environment. Now the dev is succeeded and it is now moving to QA stage. You can see QA is still waiting. I am expecting it to perform the same action in the QA environment as well. It initializes this job and it will download the artifact, and finally it will deploy it into QA environment. Okay, so this is how you can actually construct a release pipeline. Okay, so you actually select what piece of code you want to deploy into different environments. Okay, that will be in a form of build artifact, or from your GitHub, Azure DevOps Git, or from different source type. We saw few source types, right? It can be of any source type. And then once you select the artifact, you create something called stages. You create something called stages. The stage can contain multiple environments according to your project setup. Usually it starts with the dev, and people usually have a staging environment at few projects. You even create a stage for staging, and usually there will be a QA environment, and there will be a UAT, and finally into prod. You can extend this environment by creating additional stages. And if you hover over these stages, you can see there are many options. Okay, there is an option to redeploy, and there is an option to know what the logs behind the runs. Okay, you can see all those logs, what's happening. It initialized a job, it downloaded the artifact, it it ran a Python script, and there's a finalized job at the last. Okay, similarly you can view the logs for all the environment. Even if you want to redeploy also, you can do that. Okay, so this way you can easily frame a release pipeline and achieve the continuous delivery. Okay, so you can try it on your own and try to deploy using a different piece of code and deploy into different environments. And if you face any issues, let me know in the comment section. Alright guys, that's all what I want to cover. If you like this video, please subscribe and follow my channel. Thank you.